Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Gus Kattengell with you, Jim Eichenhofer. As always, appreciate the time for you to join us, and appreciate the time that Jim gives us to go over our final player in our player review. Can you believe that? We finally have reached here with 14 players, Jim.
It was a long race. I feel like we're sprinting across the finish line right now. I don't think we're kind of crawling and wheezing our way across. I think we still have a lot of energy. I mean, it does feel like, I think this might be a record for the most that we've ever done, but that's kind of the way the season went, where you had 14 players that played at least 504 minutes. I mean, there's been a lot of years, I think, where if the cutoff was 500, 600 minutes, we probably only would have had about maybe 9 or 10, but hey, that's the way the Pelican season went.
But you have to. I mean, it's a good point that you bring up, right? Because the starters, obviously, it's a storyline of itself. It's one of the reasons we believe that this team, this franchise has talent. But it's also a main storyline as to why the season didn't go the way you would have liked, because most of your starters, actually all, were injured at some point in time and missed games, if not ended their regular seasons. Then you go into the reserves. Well, those guys had to step in, be starters, and contribute in different ways. And you had rookies who were called upon to ask to even start in many instances. So you had to break it down in those three areas. I thought you did a good job of doing that because all three tell the story of the 2024-2025 Pelican season.
No doubt. I mean, we had to do a Herb Jones one, even though he didn't play in the second half of the season at all. DeJounte Murray also didn't play after the All-Star break, but Herb played 648 minutes. DeJounte Murray played 1,012, which I didn't even... I mean, he was 8th. Think about this. He was 8th on the team in minutes played, and actually really 7th if you take away Javonte Green, who wasn't on the roster at the end of the season. So DeJounte Murray was 7th in minutes played, even though he got hurt on January 31st and didn't play the rest of the season. So there's a bunch of other examples of that, of guys that played, I mean, Jeremiah Robinson Earl played 1,239 minutes, which was 6th on the team. So there was a bunch of different examples. There was really just no way to kind of divvy this down under 14. So that's what we ended up with. But it was fun doing this. And I'm kind of glad now that we can kind of turn the page and look forward to the future, which we will be doing tomorrow.
We talked about Carlo Matkovic here on Wednesday's podcast, and today here on Thursday, it's Antonio Reeves. And I would say those are two players that really stood out to me in Vegas. And you've heard me refer to that a lot, I think, during these profiles or season reviews. And I think partly is because it's really kind of our first glance. And Jim, I mean, it is, right? You've had the draft, then you have free agency, and you have all of that. And here's Summer League. So it's your first chance to kind of look at maybe players at first, second year on your roster, players you drafted. And in a lot of instances is to see, have they elevated their game or not? Or here's a plan. Jordan Hawkins is somebody it brings up. But you look in the past, Trey Murphy's rise and jump, Jose Alvarado's rise and jump, even Najee Marshall's rise and jump. Like, they've been some summer leagues where like, okay, look at these guys. And then sure enough, as the season came, they mattered, right? So when I look at Antonio Reeves, what did you think from Vegas to now?
To be honest with you, I mean, I don't remember hardly any details from Summer League because it was so long ago. I remember specific games, maybe where Carlo had a huge game, almost had 30 points in a game. But besides that, it's just so long ago that I don't remember a ton of details in terms of what Antonio Reeves did. But I do think that he was one of those guys that looked promising as far as his jump shot and his ability to defend a little bit. I think we saw that in glimpses. And then you fast forward about 9 months later in March and April of the past season, and he got to play a ton. And I think he showed very well for himself in the opportunity that he got during maybe the final 1/3 or 1/4 of the season.
It's a rarity, isn't it? In today's NBA, it's interesting. I've had this conversation with several people, and look, obviously New Orleans, Louisiana, heck, this country is a football, right? First sort of town and country. 7 rounds over. I've lost track of days. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's 7 rounds over 3 days. I get it. The NBA has 2. It's always been fascinating to me where I've heard coaches and front office people since I've been covering the NBA since, I got into the business. After the first couple of picks, you don't know. Like, well, there's only so many picks. Like, how can you not find 2 guys? And especially when you look at the second round, it's almost been like almost an afterthought. That said, the fact that Antonio Reeves is a second round pick, and the fact that maybe the Pels have used their second round pick with some pretty good players as of the
Herb
past.
Jones, second round pick. Yeah. Jose Alvarado was undrafted. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to me. There's been kind of an evolution of the second round pick in terms of the value and importance over the last few years because, I mean, by the way, too, back in the day, the NBA draft was 7-8 rounds back in like the 80s. And Jay Billis, I think, famously was like a 7th or 8th round pick, I believe, of Dallas. Don't quote me on that. So, I mean, but at some point, I think it might have been in the 80s or maybe the early 90s, they killed off a lot of the rounds of the draft. There's been some talk, I think, in recent years about, should they go to 3 rounds in the NBA draft? Should they go to 4 rounds? But going back to my point about the evolution of the second round pick, you've added these 2-way contracts now mean that you really have more guys on your roster. Even if your main roster, quote unquote, has 15 players, you now have 3 2-way contract guys, which it used to be initially it was 2 2-way contract guys. Now every team in the league has 3. So because of that, the second round, some of these second round picks that have been picked in the last year or 2 are immediately put on 2-way contracts. So there's, to make a long story short, I think the value has kind of increased because there's more ability to have. I mean, when the rosters used to be 12, maybe when we first started watching the NBA, and that was it. There was no practice squad. There was no G League. It was just 12 guys. That's all you have. Now you have 18. So I think because of that, you can fill out your roster or your 2-way contract spots more with second round picks. So to me, they've become more important, and I can see the thought process of, what if you added a 3rd round to the draft? Because I'm not really sure what the stumbling block to that is. Maybe the Players Association wants to keep it at 2 rounds, and the teams aren't going to put up a fight over that because it's not that big of an issue. But what the Pelicans have done, I think too, the Pelicans went into last year without a second round pick, and so I was expecting it to be okay. They take Yves Missi on Wednesday, which is the first round. Then Thursday, that's going to be quiet, but they end up trading into the second round. They get Antonio Reeves, and I think he proved that it was a good move because he was very productive and took advantage of the chances that he had to play. Now, the Pelicans, again, do not have a second round pick as we speak right now in the beginning part of May for June 26th, which is the second round of the draft, but they could trade into it again this year. So we're going to have to be on our toes. I'm going to have to be ready to, just like I was last year, kind of caught off guard a little bit by surprise by the Antonio Reeves pickup, but I'm glad they did it because I thought he played really well and showed promise that he has a chance to be somebody that can be in a rotation in the future.
No doubt. Todd Graffagnini, voice of the Pelicans on the radio side, will give us his thoughts here in about 10 seconds after I tell you. The NBA went to 2 rounds, 1989, Jim.
Oh, okay. I was close. I said late 80s, early 90s.
They had as many as 10 rounds, sorry. 10 rounds then. In the 70s, as many as 20 rounds.
Wow. That's a long night.
That's a lot.
I don't think I want to go back to that.
With the 19th pick, Jim Eichenhofer, such and such high school.
I want to say
New York.
I want to say there was. I have a vague memory of this reading about one time that because the draft was so long that owners were picking like their daughter in like the 18th round just
to make a pick.
Whatever.
Yeah,
I think that happened. That might happen. The MLB draft used to be 60, 70 rounds too. I think people would randomly do that as well, just for fun, just to have a laugh.
I'm with you though. It'll be interesting to see if they do add it more or not with the CBA because it's a little different now, right? I mean, you can't really kind of stack teams and stuff. You're gonna need some draft picks and some young players to develop.
The other part that I didn't even mention too when I was talking about how the importance of the second round pick has gone up. The injuries across the league have increased so much too. So you do need more guys that can play than you used to. I mean, if you have, I do think I'd have to go back and look at this, but I can almost guarantee you that, we talked about how in a previous episode, we talked about how the Pelicans had 14 guys that played 500 or 4 minutes. I bet you if you went back, 10, 20 years ago, that you'd see that very rarely happening. Whereas now it's happening a lot more, where you're just going deeper into your roster because the player availability has changed compared to what it used to be. You just need more depth now than you used to make a long story short.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we literally saw it here this season, and one of those players that did provide that additional depth and, more importantly, help the team is Mr. Antonio Reeves. So without further ado, Todd Graffagnini sits down with us, and we look back at the season that was for the Kentucky product. Back with the radio voice of your New Orleans Pelicans, Todd Graffagnini. Thank you so much for joining us again. We had an interesting conversation. I felt like we could have talked for a while when it came to Yves Missi. Antonio Reeves. Off mic, people probably don't know this. I constantly tell you about it. I was talking to Jim. I loved him in Summer League. Physical, defense, offense. Couldn't wait to see him play. It took some injuries. It took some time for him to be able to get onto the court. And quite honestly, as Willie Green has said it, maybe without those injuries, we don't know. So what did we learn from Antonio Reeves? You're Willie Green, you're sitting next to him. What did you learn this year from him?
I think we learned that when given the opportunity, he is an NBA player that you can count on to make threes and put points up. You look at the end of the season when he was playing. I mean, he was given the opportunity. He was starting games at the end. He's playing 35 minutes a game. He was putting up numbers. Mm-hmm. And so he just got lost in the shuffle. He was not going to be a part of, as the roster was, quote unquote, intact, leaving training camp. There just really wasn't a spot for him. But as the season went on and the injuries started to build up and he finally did get the opportunity, he was able to put up those numbers.
Yeah, there's so many things that happened this season that a lot of times I had to go back and double check things. But one of the things that stood out to me when I was looking at his games played that I didn't necessarily realize until I went back and looked at it was he only played in 27 of the first 64 games of the season. So, he was
in Birmingham.
We're talking many months into the year. He still really had not played that much. And of those 27 games, he only had a couple. And when I say a couple, I literally mean like 2 or 3 times where he was really in the legit rotation. It wasn't like he came in the fourth quarter because they were up or down by 25 points or whatever. One of those handful of occasions was the game against Cleveland in November where he had 34, where he really showed, man, this guy can score at this level at a rate that is impressive. But he did play in the last 18 games. He played in all of those, and I think he was very prominent during that stretch. He played in at least 23 minutes in all 8 April games. So really, if you review his season, if you go back and watch the tape, you're really watching the end of March and April. Right. The rest of the season, he did not play very much at all. But when he did get to the point where it was like, okay, every single night I know I'm going to be in the game, I'm going to be on the floor for good minutes. He made a couple starts as well. He had ended up with 6 starts. What do you think? What was the thing that impressed you the most about the way he closed out the season individually?
I think what was impressive for him is that the fact that he was able to kind of get into the offense, and Willie Green talks about it all the time. We tell him, you get it, you're putting it up. And the thing, if you look at the numbers, Jim, the percentage was nearly 40%, 39.5% shooting the 3.
Yep.
And the volume, at the end of the year, he's making 3, 4, 5 threes a game, which is what you want, definitely. So I'm glad you talked about that 34-point game against Cleveland, because I had a chance to talk to him during a Pelicans Weekly this year and asked him specifically about that game, Jim. And by the way, that was his birthday that night. So it was one of those nights that he'll remember for the rest of his life. And, of course, we didn't, this is November 20th, and we're playing Cleveland, and we've got about 8 available in that ball game. So he really had to play. Mm-hmm. And for him to do that on his birthday against one of the best teams in the league, that's a night that nobody's really going to forget anytime soon, because it was awesome to watch.
You mentioned his 3-point shooting, and obviously this is something we're going to talk about a lot with Antonio Reeves, not just now but going forward. One of the things from that Cleveland game, too, that I noted was he was actually he was 14 for 25 from the field, but he was 10 for 13 on twos in that game. So the three-point shot obviously is a huge part of what he's going to do and one of his biggest strengths, but I feel like his in-between game, too, got better as the season went on. And, I mean, what did you see from that part of the game as far as just maybe his floaters and just his shots that weren't jumpers that he was pretty successful on?
Absolutely, and you're right on that. When he took 25 shots in that game and made 4 threes, and so, like you said, 10 of those shots were middies or floaters.
Yep.
And that just, again, comes with more confidence from playing time. And the more time he got, the better we saw him as a flat shooter, just because of he knew. And go back to what you hear all the time, and you could talk about Jordan Hawkins in this aspect. When Hawkins was in the lineup, or he knew he was going to play 20 to 25 minutes a game, you saw the productivity go up. It's when he just didn't know what part of the rotation he was going to be in. And that's when you get into, when I get in, I need to just start jacking up shots because you don't know how much time you're going to get.
Yep.
And that's when he would get into trouble. And I think it's the same thing applies to Antonio Reeves, because when he knew he was going to play extended minutes, we saw the offense really step up. It's just that thought of, am I coming out at the next whistle? Am I going to be subbed out? I think that has everything to do with confidence, and we saw it with Reeves at the end of the year.
I wonder a little bit in terms of how productive he was this season and how successful I thought he was in capitalizing on his chances to play, is the fact that, for example, he's 24. He played 5 years in college. He was in 2 different places, Illinois State and then Kentucky. We've gotten to the point where we're downgrading players so much if they spend more than a year in college. It seems like the Pelicans, though, have gone kind of the opposite way. If you think about Herb Jones spent a lot of time in college. Trey Murphy did as well.
Jose.
Yeah, but specific to Antonio, I mean, how would you describe? I feel like he's a pretty quiet guy from what I've seen. I don't know if he will be more talkative as he gets more comfortable and he's around here more. But what did you see from his approach? It seems like he's a pretty serious guy, and I think that benefited him as well. He's
actually a really good kid. I mean, again, just having a chance to interview him for Pelicans Weekly, he's really humble. Like you said, he's not overly talkative, but he's very aware of what's going on. And look, he's a worker too. I mean, you go in the gym and he's getting up shots.
Yeah,
I mean,
Willie's mentioned it.
He's so. I think as someone who came out of the college ranks, so to speak, I love to see four-year guys coming into the NBA because they played a lot of basketball. It's just when you get someone coming out of high school or a one and done, how much basketball have you played?
Right.
And against what type of competition have you played against? I mean, Antonio Reeves, playing at Kentucky, I mean, he's going up against the best of the best every single night, and he was producing in that role. So I just think that it really helps what you're going to do. You go back to what Herb Jones did, what Jose Alvarado did, 4-year players in college going up against the best of the best. Jose took Georgia Tech to the ACC championship. They won an ACC championship in years and years and years. And Herb Jones is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, going up against competition every night. That has to help coming into the NBA.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's one of the things that stand out to me is people maybe don't think and forget me. Kentucky's pretty good, right? You had a lot of players come on.
They've been pretty good over the years.
He led the Wildcats in scoring.
Right.
So he wasn't a scorer for Kentucky. He was the highest scorer. And to your point, I think it's something that maybe, as Jim says, we tend to either overlook, almost diminish sometimes. But when you play there or you go through a couple of SEC tournaments, ACC tournaments, NCAA tournaments, the travel, the expectations, the going on the road, the packed houses, you're playing, right? I mean, like when you play for Kansas, like you
play Kentucky, UNC, you're playing 23,000 every night.
Rupp Arena, I mean, no doubt.
Every night.
I think that helps you.
Gus, I mean, how many times the SEC was the best basketball conference in college basketball this year, and the consensus around, even before the tournament started was the SEC tournament is going to be harder than the NCAA tournament.
Right.
If you came out of that and you won that tournament, you're going to be as prepared as anybody to win a national championship.
Yeah, I think the other element, too, of, we're talking about how much we like some of these guys that play 4, even 5 years of college. Like Gus said, I mean, the experience that they get, everything that they have under their belt is great as well. I think you can't really make a blanket statement on this, but I think the other part of it, too, is that a man is at 24 is a different person than he is at 19. And so, I mean, there's always exceptions to this. There's people that are 18 that are more mature than I am now. There's people who are 35 and they never will be mature. So it depends. But I do feel like in some of the cases with the Pelicans, like Trey and Herb are good examples of this. They came relatively older, I use that in quotes, when they got here. And you could see like how ready they were to be pros. So I think that's something that maybe the front office had prioritized of like, we want guys that are mature. We want guys that have... that you're just a different person. I think a lot of times we could probably reflect on that ourselves in our own lives of how much different you are when you're in your mid-20s than when you're still a teenager. Graf, I'm going to throw a couple Pella stats at you.
Here we go.
Antonio Reeves.
Pella stat.
And I'm going to mention too. This isn't a Pella stat, but just a note that Antonio Reeves was 6th in scoring average among second-round picks from last year and 5th in three-point makes. So I mean, he was the 47th pick, so by my math, that means he was the 17th player taken in the second round. So in a bunch of different areas, I think he outperformed a lot of the guys that were picked ahead of him in round 2. Granted, some of that was the opportunity that he got was pretty
That's what
good.
I was going to say. How much,
Some guys didn't get to play at all.
Correct.
So that it's not necessarily a fair comparison, but just a couple, footnotes on him. To the Pella stats, the two numbers. The first one you actually kind of referenced already, which is 39.5, which is he led the team in 3-point percentage. I mean, he didn't just have a good year; he was the best 3-point shooter in terms of accuracy of anybody. He shot 44.9% from 3 after the All-Star break in the 20 games that he played. He shot 31% before that. So while he was sporadically on the court, his numbers were lower. And then the second number is 58 and 67, which in the month of March, those were his percentages from the field and then 3-point range respectively. So 67% on threes.
That's a Gus Kattengell right there. Good. That is Gus Kattengell with his pom-poms in Las Vegas going, Antonio Reeves. Reeves. Oh, yeah.
I said it.
The old Gus Kattengell pat on the back. Pat on his own back.
Wait, hold on. Okay.
Yep, there it is.
There he is.
No, I'm going to go with the 60 whatever.
58% from the field, 67 on
I'm
three
going to go
March.
with the 58-67.
Yeah.
That just, again, shows you when given the opportunity, knowing he's going to play a lot, he just loosened up and was able to just let it fly.
Right. We talk about 50-40-90, and that's something that Trey has been chasing in the NBA.
I will not rest until Trey Murphy goes 50-40-90.
Right. But Antonio had 58-67 in the first two of those numbers. So that's if you
what did he do?
That,
he didn't really get to the free throw line very well.
I didn't mention that part because I think he was like 3 for 4
right.
or something like that in March. So it was 75.
Did you say in March?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
while you guys are talking, let me look that up.
I was going to say.
I thought he was 3 for 4.
Oh no! What I was going to say is the 39.5, which again is pretty darn good. In the last game of the season, and I did a little research here, Jim, so you should be proud of me here.
I'm listening.
In the last game of the regular season against OKC, which basically is a blip in my memory, he went 0 for 5 from 3 in the last game of the regular season. So if he makes maybe a couple of those threes, he's at 40%. I think that dropped him down below 40% for the year, that 0 for 5 on game 82.
Yeah. I did look it up. He was 4 for 6 on free throws in March. So I didn't put that in there because that's only 67%.
Well, that's not going to get him over the line.
So no.
But. I guess one of the things I want to wrap up with you is there's two. One may surprise you, but I think you'll remember from yesterday that we talked about. But your two players in the player profiles, Yves Missi and Antonio Reeves. Two young players, man. Two players that I don't know what the expectations were on there. I think a lot of times when we talk about the upcoming season for the Pels and what they can do, health, but a lot of it goes around the veterans. I think this is something for Pels fans to be excited about. You do have some nice young pieces to go with some veteran players to go into this team. I keep saying this, whether it's Australia, whether it's across the parking lot. When training camp starts, I think it's going to be fun because you had a lot of young guys that saw a lot of minutes. And Todd, I don't know about you, but my kid's starting to get it right now at baseball. He made a play. Now he wants to play. Now he wants to practice. You get that taste of success, and then you get that belief that I can play. Well, I want to play.
Couldn't agree with you more. We talked about it with Misi and today with Reeves. He got a taste, and he got an extended taste. And just look at the numbers. He produced 3 20-point games, 40% from 3. Look, he knows he can play in the NBA now. It's just what is he going to do in the offseason and how he is going to let the opportunity that was given to him at the end of the year, how is it going to affect him coming into next year and the confidence he's going to have coming into the next season.
All right, now we wrap up with what I've been looking forward to. Earlier this week, I don't know if you saw, little altercation, little incident took place in Milwaukee with Indiana as that series came to a conclusion. Daddy Halliburton and Giannis. You seen this? You saw this? You saw that? Yeah.
I heard. I heard about it. I know what happened.
Well, all you need to know
I thought we were
is what Jim and I were discussing.
Okay.
If there were ever a time that the Graf would run onto the court and hold either a towel or beach towel, whatever it was, with the picture of, I don't know, I guess for you it would be the Pelicans or something. I don't even know if it was Halliburton that was on there. I don't know what it was. But at some point in time, forehead to forehead happened, right? Tyrese and Giannis touching there. So I'm not saying that you would do that, but if there would be a player following a Pels win that you would just get in front of and just grin. Maybe you don't go dog cussing. Maybe you don't put your forehead.
We don't need
that. But just the old Graf grin, the bleep eating grin. I suggested some 3 players to Jim when we were talking about this earlier in the week. I want to hear from you. Give me your top 3 players you couldn't wait. And there's the headsets on the floor, and the Graf is on the court. And you're going to get right in front of these 3 players' face and just grin.
Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert, and Dillon Brooks.
Wow. It's a good list.
Nobody from OKC?
Lugens Dort.
I was going to say, you giving him
Lou
3
Dort.
is really restricting him here.
I know.
This is really...
Rudy Gobert was that runaway favorite. And look, to your point, though, right? The Lakers season came to an end because in the fourth quarter, Rudy Gobert
absolutely dominated.
I
love Rudy Gobert.
No, but it's to your point you were talking about with Yves Missi, right? I mean, the center and the big doing that.
I mean, but you go back to I know we talked about Missi,
sure.
And about how much he's got to put on some girth. Look, Rudy Gobert has been in the league for a long, long time, and he's filled out. And at the end of the year, when we're playing Minnesota and you saw Missi on the court and Gobert's on the court, you realize how much work Missi's got to do in the weight room. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You just naturally filling out. Again, he's only 20 years old, so that's going to come. But, I mean, Gobert, good job for him to eliminate the Lakers. I mean,
right,
we could go a whole nother show with the Lakers. But, I mean, you go the other night, you got Dillon Brooks, Brandon Pajemski, and Draymond Green all on the court at the same time. And boy, we didn't even know that Pat Spencer was being taught by Brandon Pajemski on how to be a punk. I mean, wow. What do we do? Look,
wow,
Golden State. I tell you what, man, they're going down my list. They are sinking.
That's another podcast.
You watch that.
Your list.
You watch the game.
Yeah.
The last part of the Rockets. Golden State Game 5.
Yeah.
See, this could be a whole podcast.
No, we could go really, really deep.
Grass angst to go through it as a
can't have it. Let's end positively.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. But obviously, that's one of the things that we look at to see as. Hopefully, we'll be talking about the postseason next year. I think we've all agreed, Todd, since we won't hear from you here for a little bit, and all the guests that we've had for our player profile podcast. If there's health, this team's got talent.
No
and
question.
This team has enough talent to make some strides. We did one for Pelicans Plus, in which I said boldly, I absolutely think they're competing for a top 6 spot next year. Do you agree?
I agree. When healthy, we've been waiting for it for a long time. But let's just hope that all the injury luck has passed us by and we can get into normal situations now and not having to replace an entire starting lineup 1 week into the season.
I think we've had a lot of seasons where we've talked about the depth, what we projected to be. I think the difference this time is that the depth is very tangible in terms of you have so many guys that have either in previous years before they were hurt a lot this season did a ton in the NBA, or guys that for the first time got a chance to play and did pretty well with it, whether we're talking about, Yves Messi with Graff earlier this week or Antonio Reeves today. So to me, that's the difference I think this time is that you just have the list of guys that have done something positive and shown that they can be good NBA players, I think is pretty long in terms of just very specific, tangible things that you can point to as opposed to, theoretical ideas about how deep the team can be.
There it is. Looking forward to it, sir. Thank you as always. Radio voice of your New Orleans Pelicans, Todd Graffagnini.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thanks to Todd Graffagnini, who actually he's going to turn around, come right back in, because we're going to have a very special radio roundtable coming up to discuss what's coming up on Monday. Jim, let everybody know what's coming up on Monday.
Yes, Monday, 6 p.m. Central is the 2025 NBA Draft Lottery. This is going to be the focus of Friday's episode on the podcast. We are going to have a radio roundtable with John DeShazer and Todd Graffagnini. So, it goes without saying the NBA Draft Lottery is a huge event at this point. It's something that people look forward to every year. We're going to get a lot into the specifics with the Pelicans. Just the main thing you need to know is that they have a 12.5% chance of winning the lottery. They have a 48% chance of finishing in the top 4. And that's really the main thing that is determined at the lottery. The only thing that's determined at the lottery is those first 4 picks. After that, it's reverse order of record. And then, a couple other quick notes related to the Western Conference that I think are relevant and things that we'll get into probably a little bit. So Oklahoma City has a chance to pick 7, 8, or 9 with the Philadelphia 76ers pick because that's top 6 protected. So OKC has a chance to add another guy like they really need it.
I was totally thinking that.
The Spurs are going to have 2 lottery picks because they also have Atlanta's and they have their own picks. So, we probably don't want to see them move up to the top of the draft either. They have a 6% chance with their pick, and then they have a 0.7% chance with Atlanta's pick of winning the lottery. And then Houston is in the number 9 slot. They have a 17% chance at the top 4 pick. They acquired their pick, this one from Phoenix. They have a 3.8% chance of winning. And then lastly, the Spurs. I can't think I already referenced this, but the Spurs are in the 14th. They're in the 8th slot and the 14th pre-lottery slot going into the lottery. So a few things to keep in mind in the Western Conference beyond the Pelicans.
Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, 2 other times that the organization has won the lottery and selected the top pick overall. There were higher or lower chances back then, right? This is the highest probability chance-wise?
This is, I believe the Anthony Davis one was 13.7.
Okay,
so this is
11.5.
This is actually in between. So this is 12.5. I actually have this here somewhere. The Zion Williamson one was 6%. So, but this is, it's funny because they changed the format and they changed the percentages. So this is actually the highest pre-lottery slot they've had since 2012. They were also 4th in 2012 going into the lottery.
Okay.
But the percentage is lower because they've changed the percentages from what they used to be. So it used to be if you had one of the 3 worst records in the league, you had a 25% chance, or was it 20 or 25% chance. Now it's 14. So they've drastically taken, and so that's the reason why this isn't the highest percentage that they've had to win the lottery in the last 15 years or so, but it is tied for the highest best slot that they've had over that time frame.
Well, you definitely want to tune in to that very special podcast, which will come out on Friday. In it, Jim Eichenhofer does his best interpretation of what it would be like to have him as NBA commissioner.
Yes.
Looking forward to that.
As I haven't, it's not like I haven't done that a lot during the season already, but why not do it again one more time?
I love it. It's all good. Again, 14 players. We took a look back at their seasons with the Pels this year. It is all on the website with an accompanying written piece from Jim. So go there, check it out, and it'll tie you over. And then, maybe we'll go upstairs and ask if we can do a post-lottery podcast, especially if the Pels do wind up winning that lottery on Monday. Again, Monday, May 12th is when it's going to take place, and it's before one of the playoff games over on ESPN.
So. Yeah, it's before Celtics-Knicks Game 4, so Nice lead into the game.
Oh, you can be nervous.
I feel like if the Pelicans win the lottery, I won't be watching much of that Celtics-Knicks game
Really?
because we'll be preoccupied with other things and we'll be doing some post-event coverage. I'm sure there'll be some interviews that are available and stuff like that. So let's hope that Game 4 of the Boston-New York game is not on my agenda for Monday night. Let's hope I skip that game completely.
Do you think they at least stay in the top 4?
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say they have a 48% chance of doing that.
There it is.
So
It would be, and the furthest, let's just get this out the way too. The furthest they can fall is double of where they are, right? So it would be 8.
Yeah.
That is the furthest. So they can't go 14, 13.
Four spots is the furthest that any team can drop, no matter where they start the lottery. Obviously, if you're 11, 12, 13, or 14, you can't drop more than 4. But yeah, if you finish 1 through I think 8, you can drop 4 spots down from wherever that is if you get bumped by 4 teams behind you. So when they start opening the envelopes, we'll be hoping that it stays according to form at least until you get to the 4th spot. We'll hope that none of those teams behind the Pelicans can bump them and push them out of the top 4.
All right, just a couple more days to find out where New Orleans will select in the upcoming NBA draft. We hope you've enjoyed all of the reviews and going back and seeing what this team was like this year. It wasn't the season everyone liked, but you could see the reasons why. We looked at the starters, we looked at the reserves, and we also looked at the rookies and their contributions, which is a reason we're kind of excited for the upcoming season. In the meantime, enjoy the playoffs. They've been fun. I know Jim talked about that already this week. Let's see what takes place, and we'll be back with you real soon on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. I'm Gus Kattengell. It's Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gus.
All right, and as always, we appreciate you tuning in right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcast. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.